We're here today at the EBRD's resident office in Tashkent to learn a little bit more about its recently launched Star Venture program. Joining us today to help us learn a little bit more about this program is the EBRD's principal manager, Sherzod Akbarov. Mr. Akbarov, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
So first, thank you for coming in, letting us come in and speaking to us about your Star Venture program. It was recently launched in ICT Week about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you see its prospects here in Uzbekistan?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, welcome. Good to have that interview because it comes very timely at the time when we're launching our new program called Star Venture. This program has been running since 2019 in over 20 countries of operation for EBRD, and we've waited for quite some time to prepare the ground for the launch of this program in Uzbekistan as well. We feel that now the ecosystem for startup development is very good in terms of the interest from the market, in terms of the interest from or the support from the government, and interest from the side of venture capital investors. And EBRD as a development organization would like to help the startup ecosystem to develop, but also to identify high potential startups that we can nurture, support, and bring to international level. So we're partnering with a number of institutions, both locally and internationally, and we feel that this program has a very good set of activities, a diverse set of activities that would be quite useful and helpful for the fledgling startup sector.
I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned the ecosystem now is growing and becoming more, what's that word?
Vibrant or dynamic?
Vibrant, dynamic. It's seeing more interaction. Why do you think it's kind of pushed on into these stages? What's making it so that it has potential?
Well, the ecosystem consists of a lot of elements, and for the ecosystem to develop, all the elements have to come into play. It starts with interest from entrepreneurs themselves. So the entrepreneurs and the SMEs, in that case, or the startups themselves, are the driving force behind this. And startup is equal to innovation. So that's what startups are for. They bring innovation to the economy. Through innovation, economy develops and helps the country to develop. And development is a very complex area, as we know, and it consists of many players. So another important player, and maybe a key player in context of Uzbekistan, is the government. And government is keenly interested to develop the innovation per se, but also the IT sector, the high-tech industries, and it's putting a lot of focus and effort into developing this. And there have been a number of programs recently where the government has made a concerted effort to develop IT sector, for example. And by developing IT sector, I don't only mean the infrastructure upgrades that they're doing, the internet connection, the penetration, but also their support to scaling up the education, IT education, to provide some incentives for firms to come into IT sector, not only local firms, but international companies, IT companies, to bring their businesses to do this business process outsourcing. So I think it's playing in the favor of the market in general. Government is playing a catalyzing role in developing the IT sector in general, and that has a spillover effect into other sectors. But the government cannot be the sole player or the sole driver of this. We need the universities, we need associations, we need a group of mentors, business angels. So as I mentioned, this is all coming in play at the right moment when there is good economic development background or backdrop. The Uzbek economy is developing quite rapidly, 5-6% per year. The outlook that most of the international organizations have provided is quite positive for the nearest term, and this is despite a very challenging regional context.
Well, that actually brings me into my next question, which is, do you see Uzbekistan becoming a sort of Silicon Valley, or we could say a Silicon Steppe?
Well, Silicon Valley, I think every country wants to be a Silicon Valley, but Silicon Valley was good for its own time, and it came to that level for a reason, and the reason was that there were institutions and players who grasped the idea and who invested time and effort and money into making it happen. I don't think Uzbekistan needs to become a second Silicon Valley. It can become a regional hub which offers similar. Uzbekistan can become a regional hub similar to Silicon Valley, but have its own features and have its own advantages compared to other instances. And Silicon Valley has been, in a way, replicated in many other parts of the world. In itself, in the U.S. itself, there are several hubs around Boston. There are these ecosystems in Europe, in Asia, and each ecosystem is different in its own way.
So what is it that sets Uzbekistan apart in terms of its ecosystem?
I think Uzbekistan has a number of advantages when it comes to development of IT sector in general and the startup ecosystem. Uzbekistan has invested significantly into upgrading the IT infrastructure and internet connection and electricity supply, including alternative energy sources. That definitely helps to develop the high-tech industries in the country. Uzbekistan has been developing its R&D capacity, investing into science, bringing in international companies with modern technologies. But also Uzbekistan has been heavily investing in its human capital through education and through providing opportunities for upskilling of the labor force, and this comes in the form of different programs, and one example is 1 million coders, where the local youth and not only youth can engage into training into IT industries to obtain new skills that may help them become internationally competitive. And companies that are eyeing coming into Uzbekistan definitely need a workforce which will be able to perform tasks which can be done in other parts of the world. So I think this is a definitive competitive advantage that Uzbekistan can rely on.
Considering Kazakhstan has already quite a well-established startup ecosystem, would they be a direct competitor to Uzbekistan, or do you see some sort of coexistence and co-working?
Kazakhstan definitely has a well-developed ecosystem, but I wouldn't say that it is more developed than that in Uzbekistan. At least my personal opinion is that any ecosystem has its own strengths and weaknesses, but at the same time, I don't think we should separate the two. It would be much more beneficial to look at Central Asia as one ecosystem where we don't have to compete, but we rather have to look at this as a common market, because any startup requires a customer base, and the customer base for us is our nearest neighborhood, but we aim to go global as well, to go international. So there are some features in Kazakhstan that may be a bit more advanced, but in Uzbekistan there are also some efforts to focus on areas where other countries may not have focused as of now. Each ecosystem is unique in its own way, and they have their own development path. I think eventually the region will be at a relatively balanced development level, and we will be part of one unified market.
I wanted to ask you also about, a lot of people don't really understand the difference between a startup and a traditional like SME. Can you go over briefly about how you're selecting criteria for the startups to join the program?
Great. Good question, because startups and SMEs are different animal. And EBRD has a long history of supporting SMEs in all countries of operation, and startups have been somewhat of a new direction of our activity, and EBRD decided to enter the early stage space quite recently. Therefore, I think we have to make the distinction between the traditional or so-called plain vanilla SMEs and the startups which require different treatment and different approach. In the time that we have run our SME program in Uzbekistan, we've had a number of startups come to us at the level of prototyping, or even before they started generating any revenue, and our existing procedures at that time disallowed working with them because they didn't meet certain criteria. And this new program actually allowed us to increase the space and to flex the eligibility criteria towards startups, because startups are those companies that have a very nice idea but require just a little bit of a nudge to bring this idea to revenue generation. So the key difference that I would highlight is traditional businesses are more around efficiency, where the idea has been tested either in other parts of the world or in this, and examples can be coffee shops, can be some small production, supermarkets. So these have been tested, and there's certain ways of doing it. Startups are more about scale and about scalability, I would say, where efficiency comes at a later stage once the business becomes sustainable. And in the timeline for startups to grow is much quicker. At the same time, the failure rate for startups is much higher compared to traditional, just because this is a new space and not very established space yet. I think the distinctive feature of startups is that it is based on an idea that others have not thought about, or those ideas that have not been put to practice. So that I think is very unique in itself, that startups take the idea and bring it to practice from scratch, basically, without having any assurance that this idea will actually be profitable in the end.
Well, is the program targeting any industries in particular, like agriculture, medicine?
I would say that we say we are sector agnostic, which means we work across sectors, but there are certain trends in the startup space where startups tend to focus more, and at this point we see a number of companies go into the education sector, edtech. Some companies are eyeing agri-sector, agri-tech, medical, healthcare, medtech. This depends on the specific country, but also on the specific need that this startup is planning to address.
The biggest challenge that startups in Uzbekistan face is follow-through. They have the idea, but they don't have the guidance to get there. Does your program provide them with like a mentorship? capability, or is it mostly just financing?
The program has a number of elements to support, as I mentioned, the ecosystem and provide direct support to startups. And these include custom-tailored advisory support. These include access to financing and advice on how to raise finance. But this does include element on mentorship, on matching companies, on networking elements. So all of it is part of the offering as part of this program. With the launch of this program, we're very much hoping that it will be well received by the startup community in Uzbekistan. This is the first time, this is the pilot that we're just starting, and I would say this is a partnership. Since this is a new area of focus for our program, for the EBRD in Uzbekistan in general, it's a partnership where we provide resources which we think would be useful and would be helpful to the startup community. But in return, we expect to learn from the startup community, because they know their challenges, their needs, and their priorities much better than we do. The challenge for us at the beginning would be to identify the companies that have the high potential of becoming champions in their field, and this would provide a certain demonstration effect to the market. We understand that startups are all unique, and there is no cookie-cutter approach when we start this program. So we would like to work with as many sectors, with as many companies that we can fit into this program, and each company brings invaluable insights into how startups operate, into how startups can grow their business and scale up, and hopefully based on that experience we can contribute to further growth of the startup ecosystem in general, and to internationalization of local companies over time. We have made a call for applications very recently. The application process ran through November 27th. We encourage you to apply, because we think this program has the potential of bringing good expertise, of providing good networking opportunities, providing training, starting with diagnostics, and we feel like with your support, with your interest, we can custom tailor this program to the needs of the Uzbek startups and really help them identify those areas where we can bring value and where we can support further.